Hey guys, and welcome to Pheas Airsoft, where today I'm going to fit this Gate Titan in this KWA T6. Hi guys, welcome back. If you are going to enjoy my video today, or you enjoy my videos, please do consider liking and subscribing. It really does help me out. So we're going to make a start here. I've got a viewer's T6 here from KWA, so thank you to Douglas for letting me do this work for you, and obviously letting me video it and put it on my channel. What he's done is he's just sent me the lower receiver. He's removed the stock and the battery cap off there, which is absolutely fine because all we need is just this lower receiver. And then he's gone for the advanced version of the Gate Titan. So this is the new packaging that comes with the Gate Titan patch, which I'm a little bit jealous about. I would love one of those. Douglas, it's definitely coming back to you in the packaging, and if it's missing, it's not my fault. You also get the USB link. You get a couple of different cables, one for the computer underneath. You get micro USB to micro USB, and you get a USB-C to micro USB, and that's the one we want. And I'm going to do a follow-up video on this about how we're programming it using the Gate Control Station app. You then got your installation kit, and you've got the actual Titan itself and a quick start guide. So we'll get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the battery compartment and start getting in. So hopefully you can see down in there is a Phillips head screw, and we're just going to undo that screw. And lift that off, and that just with a little bit of jigging about does come off relatively easily. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to briefly show you, before I go any further, the rate of fire that this is getting with a 7.4 and an 11.1. What I am going to do first though is I'm going to remove this charging handle just so we don't damage it in any way, particularly the metal part here where it links onto this spring and its metal rod. It is quite flimsy and I don't want to break it and damage it. I'm sure Douglas would not be very happy, so I'm just going to pull that forward. A flat head screwdriver, I'm just going to pull forward and then pull it forward and get the screwdriver underneath it, and I should be able to slight camera issue there. So I'm just going to get the screwdriver under there and I'm just going to lift it out, and that's lifted it up out of the gearbox there. And then what we're going to do is just ever slightly twist that towards me and it lifted up, and then we can safely remove it and put it out of the way for later. So we'll get the batteries in. So we've got the 7.4 2200 milliamp. We'll go for that one first. So safe, single shot, full auto. It's not too bad because it's not driving the recoil engine. It's actually not too bad a rate of fire. So switch that one out and we'll bring in the 11.1 now. So safe, single shot, full auto. Obviously that's significantly better, significantly nicer, much snappier. And what we're looking for is to get very similar results out of using the Gate Titan with a 7.4 volt. Now the beauty of fitting it into T6 or a non-recoil version from KWA like this is that there's actually no need to cut off the connectors off the end and desolder anything. It'll come out quite happily. So what we're going to do is we're just going to push in and twist it out, and we're just going to release. There's the spring and the spring guide. And this has obviously got the adjustable FPS system, which can be adjusted by putting the tool that you get in the box down there and messing with that. But we're not bothered about that just this second. So next we're going to remove the pistol grip, and we need some tools. I suspect it's that one. Yeah, there we go. So that's a Torx 8 that I'm using there. So on this particular pistol grip, there's one in the bottom here and then the one on the back. which would appear to be a different size. So for some reason, on the other ones I've done when they've got these style pistol grips, the screw on the back is not normally a different size thread, but for some reason this one is. So I've had to switch to a hex key or Allen key, and that is a 1.5. So I'll keep that over there for now, just so we know which one we're using later. And there's the plate. And we'll get the motor out. So I'll lift the wiring out. So this is the anti-shorting thing that supposedly stops the triggers arcing and causing damage to it. We are going to remove that like we've done with the other installations, because we don't need it anymore, because the current is no longer going to the motor. Lift that up and out of the way. So there's the standard high torque motor. Need a Phillips head again. There's 2 Phillips head screws down here. There's one. There's the other. Just a point to note, obviously at this disassembly point, the red cable came up the front, curled up and went over, and the red terminal was at the back, and the black came up the back, came up out of the hole forward and onto the front terminal. But just in case you decide not to fit your gate when you get this far in, or if you're doing something else, that was the organisation of it. So next thing we're going to do is we've got a screw in the back. Which just releases that, and we'll keep those together. And then we've got a pin, and we've got the mag release as well. And then once they're out, we're in. Just had a short break there. I was just having a slight issue with the screw in the mag release button, where for some reason my none of my normal Torx heads fit in there, so I've just had to go and find my Allen key set out, and it's like one of the smallest Allen keys I've ever seen in terms of size actually fit in it. So I'll keep that to one side for now, but it was a very tiny Allen key to get that out. And then all we've got left now is just a couple of pins, and this will nicely come out. So I'm just going to take this off camera and knock the pin out. Just to confirm then, if you're looking down the gun, the threads on this little pin here were on the right hand side of the receiver, so we can take that out of the way. The last pin should by this point, and it does, just pull and click, and then we can, I'll unscrew this because it makes our life easier if I unscrew this and get it out of the way. So just held the wiring down and out of the way, and then I unscrewed this, and it just makes it easier now and for a little bit later once we've got the tightening. And this will now literally just lift up and out, nice and easy like that. So there we are. So the next stage we're going to do is we're going to strip open the gearbox, remove some components, fit the gate, reassemble, and the job's a good one. So I've got a Torx T10. I'm just going to remove all the screws and keep them roughly in the right place. There is a little washer on each of these screws. If you have got one of the older style M4 variants that have got the mag cut off, you will notice that this is not the same as that gearbox. It's very similar, but that style gearbox has additional bits on the outside to operate the cut-off. So I've got the screws out now, and we are ready to split this gearbox down. So I'm just going to gently push down on the cylinder and lift up on the top. Might get a little bit of Obviously the gears have stuck themselves to the inside of the the right side of the gearbox, but it's fine. We'll just take the anti-reversal latch out of the way, and then I'm going to take the air nozzle and the cylinder and everything out of the way, and that's popped out the set to gear, which is looking nice. I'm just checking it's clean enough that it'll work quite happily with the Titan. And then we're going to lift the trigger out. So just taking the trigger out, and we have got a replacement trigger to put in as well. We're going to take the spring off the trigger block. We won't be needing that anymore. And there's a little screw at the top there, a little screw at the bottom, and this will just lift out. We will be removing the safety as well, because we don't need that either. So we're taking that off, drop that part out. The trigger block might need a little bit more. There we go, and it just lifts up and out, so that's out of the way now, we don't need that. And then the last part is the cut off here that we're just going to remove, so I'm just going to remove that screw. The main reason we don't need it is because the actual gate itself uses optical sensors to basically control all of this stuff for us, so we don't need these things. You will still need the anti-reversal latch that's come out, but everything else you're absolutely fine, you won't need. Push that out. There we go, disconnect that spring, and then we are ready to modify the selector. So I'm just going to put these to one side. Now, it's not a selector, we will keep that to one side. That little silver screw bolt comes out of the back there, and that's what the sling plate screws into that screw, so obviously make sure you keep that safe. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to twist, and there we go. I'm going to take the selector plate out, and I'm going to clean that in a second, and I'm going to put the sticker on that. But then what I want to do specifically is I need to file down this corner here. So I've got my files just off camera. I'm going to file this corner down, and if I don't, it's going to scratch the sticker off that the optical sensors need to read the sticker to help it work. So I'm just going to go and modify this, and then I'll come back and show you where we're up to. Here we are for the next update then. So hopefully you can see, if I just bring this close, you can see it's a little bit silver down this edge here, and what I've done is I've just taken a file and I've just filed off the corner, because it tends to be cast quite sharp, and that's fine if you're running the normal trigger block, but because we have to attach a sticker for the optical sensor onto the selector plate, it does get caught on this corner here, and it just tears the sticker off. So basically just a little bit of filing down this corner here just to round it off nicely, not a lot, just, you know, sort of just a little bit of light filing. There we go, focus now. A little bit of light filing on that corner there will do you the world of good and save you many hours of hassle. So what we can do next is we can just bring that selector plate back in and just put it back in its runners. I've probably mentioned this before, but it's worth saying KWA and a lot of their gearboxes now put these three little like markings, and those are to indicate where the selector should sit when it's dropped into the receiver and it goes into these locations. So that's your safe setting, that's your semi-auto, and that's your full automatic. So you know once you're reassembling it where that needs to sit. That's looking good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to install the actual bottom half of the gate that's got the wiring on, and then manipulate the wiring. So I've just lifted it out of the box, and I've taken the top part off because you don't need the top part on for this part, and all we're going to do is we're just going to literally drop it down, and this post here goes in through that, and it just drops in. The weighting of the wire does pull it out, so it just drops in ever so nicely with a tiny little bit of movement. Just try and get it sort of as central as possible, and that's it. Now the whole with a white circle around it, that is the one that we're going to use to mount it to the side of the gearbox. And in the installation kit, and this is the basic or advanced, you get two mounting sets. You get the 2.5 and the 2. We actually need the 2 for this gearbox because the hole that it's screwing into is a 2 basically. So get these out. From experience, I've found that you just need one of these washers, little washers, a screw, and one of these, when I can get it, you have a black insulation washer. So just to check and show you, flick through the guide to the installation. So the way this needs to go in is it needs to be installation washer first, so the insulation washer, the black washer first, then your silver washer, then you screw on top, and that's how it should be set up to make sure that there's no sort of contamination of signal or anything like that. So I've got the insulation washer, got the silver washer, and I'm going to come back in a minute because this is really fiddly to do and I dislike doing this part. So I will see you in a moment. I managed to do that now, so the hole's generally not threaded very well, so you just need to put a little bit of pressure down initially just to get it to bite in and then secure it down. Now please don't over tighten. If you over tighten it, you are just going to crack the board and you will stop it working altogether. But now it's mounted in there, this board doesn't move at all, and I'm really happy with how and where it's sat. So the next job then is to basically route the wiring, and it falls more or less into a natural wiring position where you've got the red will be going out of the back of the gearbox, the black will be going out of the front. So what you need to do first is these two wires here that are connected to the red, they need to be laid first down this track, otherwise they'll stick in the way of the motor and they'll get shredded by the motor when the motor kicks in, and then you've just broken your Gate Titan. Obviously not a good thing. So I'm just going to lay those down the track and we'll take it from there. I will be using quite a big Torx head just because it's a flat surface, just to help me push the wires down into those tracks, and it helps to secure them as well. Now the wire is quite stiff, which is quite good, and it helps to keep its shape once it's in position. Now with this thinner one that needs to come through, what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it down. I'll show you more clearly in a second. Let's run that one into there. There we go. So hopefully you can see this black thin wire here. I'm just pushing this down and into this empty space here because this can bump up and get caught by the motor, which obviously we don't want. So I'm just pushing it down there, and then the wire comes the rest of the way up there. The excess sits in the top of that track, which is good, we're happy with that, and then the black terminal wire can just quite happily then sit in that track there. We just need to make sure that it doesn't block this hole here, because that's where your mounting pin will go back through afterwards. It doesn't matter if they cover it a little bit, because when you put the pin through, as long as you put it through carefully initially, it will just push them out of the way itself. So we're not overly concerned with that. That I'm pretty happy with. Now the next stage to do or try is to install your trigger with the spring, put the top part of the board on, and then close the gearbox up. You don't necessarily need to screw it shut, just make sure that it goes together and it doesn't feel like anything is rubbing or catching. So I'll just click that in there, push the spring down in there. That's not catching on that, that's lovely. And then I'm going to put the top part of the board on. And then I'm going to bring in the top part of the gearbox. I'll just take the gears out for now. You can also at this stage or you can do it separately. We'll do it at the same time. I'm going to drop the sector gear back in, and I'm looking to make sure that it's sat in there and it's not catching on the sensor, and that it's not catching on the top sensor, because there's a sensor on the underside of this top part. So I'm just going to assemble that together. I'm going to squeeze it together. That's definitely not touching anything. I'm happy with that. I'm spinning the gear. That's definitely not touching anything either. So I know that the installation now is ready to proceed and go ahead with the rest of the installation. So all that remains now is for me to put the gear set back in, and the rest of the internal components, and then I can reassemble it and we can get this going and configured. So drop that in first. Just make sure that there's not too much grease on the gear, because you don't want the grease getting on the sensors and confusing it. Put the anti-reversal in next. So there's the anti-reversal. So that's my gear set in. Just keep an eye on the anti-reversal latch. Sometimes a little bit of movement and it will just pop itself out. And if you're used to doing tech-in on gearboxes, you will know the pain of doing this regularly, and that some gearboxes, it can take a long time to get the anti-reversal latch to stay in place. So if you don't know what the anti-reversal latch is, it's pretty much in the name. Once your gearbox turned over and it's spinning the rest of the gears, the anti-reversal latch stops it unwinding effectively. If you don't have one, it can occasionally cause issues and things like that. So it should be in there. So that's the gear set in. I'm going to put the little silver bolt in at the back where it should be. Just going to dry my hands off a little bit. There's the top board. And I believe that's everything. Right, so let's get the top part in. And that clicked together lovely. Fair play to KWA on how easy and nice that is. So I'll come back in a second once I've put all the screw set back in. All the bigger ones go down at the bottom, all the smaller ones across the top. There we go, we've got the gearbox back together now, so we're ready to put it back into the receiver and start rebuilding. If this has come out, the little bolt catch system, bolt release system, then you can just drop it back in. It just slots straight back in. It may need to lift back out again to help you get the gearbox in. So I'm just going to feed the battery wire down out the back there. I'm just going to drop two motor wires down out the bottom. The gearbox is nicely just going to drop back into place, nice and easy as that. So I'm just going to put the back pin in, and now I'm carefully going to slide this pin in, just making sure that it moves those wires out of the way. And if it's struggling a little bit, what I can do is just push in a screwdriver, get a thin screwdriver, and I can just, no, even than that, I can just help those out of the way a little bit. So I've got the screwdriver all the way through, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to chase it out with the pin, and that should nicely there we go. And then I'm just going to tap that back into place. That's back in place now, so our gearbox is nice and solid in there. That's not going to go anywhere. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my needle nose pliers, and if you look into the connector there, you'll see it's got like a, hopefully you can focus on that, on this bottom edge here, it's kind of, it curls round in on inside itself. Hopefully, come on. There we go. You can see it curls inside itself. That's going to go down, so I'm just going to grab it and turn it 90 degrees. Same with the black one. And this is obviously ready. At this stage, well, we've still got access to it, I'm going to remove these two screws. And remove the anti-arcing chip because we no longer need it now. I don't think it would cause any issues with the Titan, but I don't want to run any risks, so I'm just going to remove it. Put that away. Screw that back in. And throw it around. At this stage, it's worth just making sure that the connectors just nicely just click without too much pressure onto the motor terminals, and there's nothing worse than getting it together and then it being an absolute pain to get the terminals on. So just making sure, yeah, they go on relatively easily. I can work with that. So the next stage is I'm going to bring back in the rear of the receiver and just screw that back in. I'm just casually, easily holding the battery wires out of the way, and there we go. Nice and simple there. I can now bring in the rear sling loop, which helps to keep this locked in place, centralised and everything. There we go. I'm just going to tighten that back down. Next we can do is we can put the spring assembly back in, the spring guide, and that just slides in. It goes in at one position and quarter twists in and locks, and that's nice and secure now. And next part is the motor, the battery compartment. I'll leave a few minutes just until we've got this working. So we'll bring the pistol grip back in. And we'll screw those back down. There's one. Here's number two. Oops. Go. So those are both in. Now what's going to happen is the red wire is going to come out and basically go forward and come to the red terminal on the front. The black cable is going to come up the front, and then we're just going to curl it round. There we go. So red terminals come up the front, and then I'm going to plug it onto its connector, just there. And the black, I'm going to curl round and click onto its connector at the back. There we go, and the excess just gets kind of fed into there and coiled up a little bit. So we can then bring the base plate for the pistol grip and position that so it doesn't nip the wires. It is a little bit fiddly to get it all positioned rightly, but once it's in, it'll go in quite nicely, and then you can just quickly, keeping some pressure on it, tighten that down, and then I'll switch using the correct tool to get that one back in. And that is your Gate Titan installed. All we've got left obviously is the mag catch. The battery cover we'll put it on for now. So the battery cover just slides in, it kind of shows you the correct shaping it needs to go on, it clicks in, and then in the back of here you've got a plate that just needs screwing in with a Phillips head into position. You're probably going to need to lower this down using your free hand and positioning it, because it's going to be a little bit fiddly to get back in. So the plate's in place, it's just a screw now that I'm fighting with. And there we go. So I'll screw that down into the there we go. So I'll come back in a second, I'll just check the settings on this and then we'll do a test fire. So just had it linked up to the app to make sure that the settings are alright. It detected everything absolutely fine, so now we can basically test fire it. So what I've done is I'm going to use the exact same batteries, and what I've done is, because this finishes in a Dean's and Douglas, when you watch this it does need to finish in a Dean's, so you might want to convert your batteries. You're better off with the Dean's anyway. I have got an adapter for now and that'll be absolutely fine if you need it. So I'll put the adapter on, there's my 7.4, I do suspect it might be I thought it was fully charged, I'm not sure. So on safe, we can still pull the trigger because we had to remove the cut off, but you can configure safe to be a shooting mode if you really want. I've turned the sensitivity down, so now we barely touch it. It's definitely snappier. That is definitely a country mile better than what it was. And we're now on full auto. That is definitely better than what it was on the 7.4. So I'm quite happy with that. I'll get that out of the way. We'll bring in the 11.1, and again, nothing. It did actually like burst then for some reason on semi. I assume that's because of how fast it turned over, but that's really nippy. And then full auto, that's obviously just absolutely crazy rate of fire. So if you have followed this through and you are doing it, you've now got a fully working installed Gate Titan in your T6 from KWA. I hope this has been useful to you. Please do like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.